Hello, this is Rich Foley, and welcome to the Blue Rose Copper and Restoration Shop. Hammondsport, New York, small city on Keuka Lake, has an art show and auction every year called the Palettes of Keuka. And the theme of it is they have a palette that's 2 foot wide, 4 foot high, and the artists paint their portraits onto these palettes. As a coppersmith, I'm going to make a copper sculpture for my palette. I'm going to have all the pieces made up ahead of time. I'm going to show you how I'm going to assemble it, solder it together, and build my palette for the art show. Let's head to my shop. Okay, let's get started. Here I have a picture drawn of the palette that we're going to be making. The name of my sculpture is Yin and Yang, which is an ancient Chinese symbol. This symbol is 24 inches in diameter. Everything is made out of copper. The bottom piece, this piece here, which is the light part of the symbol, is made from plain polished copper. This part of the symbol, which is the dark part of the sculpture, is made from a textured copper with a liver of sulfur finish on it. Then there are these 2 spheres, or the 2 eyes, and I have the parts made up ahead of time. This is a 24-inch diameter piece of copper, 24 inches in diameter, and this is the textured copper on top. And I'm going to take you through step by step and show you how I made that. The bottom piece, 24 inches in diameter, is made from a piece of flat 20-ounce copper. What you do is you take a dividers or a Dremel point, depending on the diameter of the piece you're going to make. These are sheet metal layout tools. This is a dividers, this is a Dremel point. And you draw a 24-inch, you scribe it onto your piece of copper, 24-inch diameter circle. Then you have to cut those out by hand. So you use a bull snips. I use a bull snips, which is a sheet metal snips. Or I use the aviation snips. And I carefully cut that 24-inch circle out. And then I have my base made. The base of my copper made. Then I use a special copper which has a stippled finish to it. It just gives them some dimension to the sculpture. And that's this part, which is the dark side of it. And as you can see, this is dark. It's almost black. The way I get that black finish on is with a liver of sulfur chemical solution. So what you have to do is you have to pickle your copper. What the pickling does is it cleans it. Cleans any of the oxides, any of the oils. Then you submerge the piece into a solution of liver of sulfur. It's a chemical solution. You just submerge it in it and you just watch it. And it turns it black. And you can get any color black that you want from it. It'll become very, very black if you leave it in a long time. So then you take that out, you neutralize it, and it gives a beautiful It gives it a beautiful black finish, which is what I want for the dark side of it. Then you have to take and you have to lay out these circles in your layout in a 24-inch diameter and into this part. You have to lay those out, and you have to hand cut those also. You cut those out with your sheet metal snips. You got to be very careful with it that you don't damage the metal, but you carefully cut those out. Now you've got your holes cut. The next step is you have to solder these pieces in. So what you have is you have a sphere, copper sphere, which is this. And you have to carefully solder that onto that copper very neatly so you don't see any of the solder. It's all soldered from the backside. So your finished product, you'll see no solder. So the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you, is I'm going to solder this piece into this piece of the sculpture that has the black patina finish on it. Okay, I'm getting ready to solder the sphere into the dark section of my sculpture. And I'm going to use a soldering torch to solder that on there. Now, soldering is a means of joining or uniting together pieces of metal with a fusible alloy of tin and lead, which is what solder is. This is solder. It's 50-50 solder. It's a wire solder. And I'm going to use my safety glasses. You should use safety glasses when you're soldering. And I also put on a pair of gloves to protect my hands from the flux. The flux is it's a liquid acid, mild acid, which is necessary to do the soldering process. It cleans the oxides and the dirts from the two pieces, and it allows allows it to sweat and adhere properly. So I put a little bit of soldering flux on my piece here. I don't want to put too much on because I don't want it to sweat through too much. Start my torch. This is an acetylene soldering torch. And you apply the heat to the piece, and you apply your solder to the piece. You don't want to get too much heat on here, because you'll warp your piece and you'll sweat the solder in too deep. And the solder will flow where your heat is. There. I have my my other side, my other sphere soldered into the piece. Now I'm actually going to solder this piece, and you can see all these spots that I have soldered on here. I'm going to solder that onto the 24-inch diameter piece of the lower section, which I'm going to show you how to do. I'm just finishing up soldering the two pieces together. And what I did was I soldered it from the back side through these little windows that I drilled through the back side of the piece. And the object of that is you don't want to see any solder on the other side. You don't want to see any fasteners. So you blind solder it, and then you don't see anything. So my final soldering is filling these holes and plug soldering it from the back side. I turn that over. You can see the sculpture is soldered together. The two spheres are put in there. One sphere's out, the other sphere's in. So I'm making progress. I'm going to do some finishing touches on this, and I'm going to get back to you and show you how I'm going to install it onto that pallet. I completed my art sculpture on the pallet. This pallet has a bamboo background, and we have the yin and the yang metal sculpture. And I also added a little gingerbread to this. I made these paint brushes out of metal. This is made out of copper tubing. And I put a green patina finish on it with a brass band around it and paintbrush bristles. Then I fastened that onto the pallet. I glued the metal sculpture onto the pallet. Then I soldered wire clips to it. And I brought those through the back of the pallet and I tightened them up. That just gives it a little more hold in case the glue failed. And I also did the same thing with the paint brushes. This concludes my video of the yin and yang metal sculpture. I'm going to enter this into an art show and auction at Hammondsport, New York art show. And people will be able to bid on this metal sculpture and the pallet. I'm Rich Foley. This is the Blue Rose Copper and Restoration Shop, and I hope to see you again.